So it's finally time for the P1P review video. A while ago I made a video showing the unboxing and setup of the Bambu Labs P1P, but I never made an actual review video. That's because everyone has already made a video about it before, but with a nice comment from a viewer, some thinking, and a fair bit of time with the printer, I think I may have some unique things to say and a different approach to printer reviews in general. With that being said, this review is more of a user experience video and is not professionally produced by any means. What this means is that I will not be talking about the printer specs in depth, my audio may not be perfect, and my camera angles may not always be the best. This is probably going to be a long video, so there will be timestamps in the description and hopefully chapters available if you want to skip a topic that you don't find interesting. If all that sounds good to you, then let's get into the video. The P1P is a highly respected printer at this point, and for good reason. It does print fast and typically with decent quality. However, there are some faults, and a few of them aren't even related to the printer itself. The first possible detraction from the printer has to do with simply acquiring it, and I'm not even just talking about the price. The price is a bit steep, though with the quality and tech included, it does hold its value. It also helps that you can get it $100 cheaper than the original price because they came out with the upgraded version that comes with all the add-ons at the previous full price. If you want to buy those add-ons afterwards, they charge I think $150, and then it'll probably be plus shipping as well, but I may be wrong about that, which means that it won't be just an extra $100 upcharge if you just buy the upgraded version right off the bat. But one of the main issues for some people is that it's not on any popular resale sites like Amazon, at least not at the time of this recording. This might have changed on some other sites, but on Amazon, the only things currently available for the Bambu Labs printers are third-party replacement or alternate parts. Speaking of Amazon, I have started working with the affiliate program, so even though I can't put anything directly Bambu Labs related, I can put some other good products there that can be helpful as well. If you enjoy what you see here, consider clicking and purchasing through one of those links. Now, since we can't buy the printers or name brand parts anywhere else, we need to go through their site. Now, this means making an account and all that to be able to track the shipment and get future customer support, but that's fine, it's fine. But what really gets my goat, what really boils my piss, is that they have free shipping, but only on non-printer and AMS products. And only if you spend more than around $50 if I remember correctly. Now, hitting that pay threshold isn't hard because almost everything on the site is pretty expensive. But their main export is the printers and AMS system, which cost a lot. Now, the shipping costs aren't as high as they would be through the postal service. Comparatively, it's quite lax. But it's still just kind of weird to me that they even have a free shipping policy to tempt you with, but the things you're typically really there for are exempt. It just slightly twinges the brain a little that you have to spend the extra $25 when ordering a $600 printer. Then if I saved up enough for the AMS, I would have to pay an extra $18 on top of that. It's been a long time since I've got the printer, so I'm using my previous video for some reference. The printer arrived sturdily packaged. I don't remember if there was an external box or just the one that we see here, but this box does have some defining branding labels on it. If this was the only box, those labels can be an issue. I have a video about this printer too, but I got a FlashForge Creator Pro 2 before the P1P, and the first one got lost almost immediately through Amazon's shipping. When I got the whole thing sorted out and finally received a printer, Amazon had just slapped a shipping label on the product box with a bunch of branding on it and shipped it like that. So I honestly think it got swiped or something in one of the first warehouses, because based on the in-depth Amazon tracking where it actually tells you where things are being registered, I think it only made it a couple of stops, then got labeled as processing a few times, then stayed that way for a week or so until I called support about it. Anyway, this is pretty good packaging, but the labels could be an issue. Though something to be careful of that I read somewhere, I think it's somewhere on Bambu Labs' site, they said if you request to send them your printer for repairs or maintenance, and it arrives with something broken that wasn't described or requested in the original requests, so essentially if something breaks in shipping, they will consider it your fault. Now, I don't know if this policy has changed or how harsh they are about it. I don't know if they simply won't be willing to fix the additional damage at all, or if you can pay extra to have them fix it, but either way, You basically need to keep the box and all the packaging and remember how to repack the printer. I think they may have videos on repacking the printer for shipping, so they probably aren't leaving you completely high and dry, but still, the printer is fairly big, so the packaging has to be even bigger. Keeping this box around is quite an inconvenience for most people. I have mine in my family's shed, but if I needed to move out, I couldn't keep that big box in an apartment. So let's say you cut the tape and break the box down. You still have this big sheet that you have to take care of, and you need to keep track of the foam. Otherwise, the printer is still at high risk in the box. I think the foam was protecting every side of the printer with at least an inch or a half inch of thickness. So if you put the printer in the box without the foam, you have an inch or two of wiggle room for that thing to be rocking around in there. And even if the box is relatively conforming to the printer, the box typically isn't enough protection on its own in the hands of some shipping companies. So now we've talked about the hindrances before even getting to see the printer. Let's talk about the goodies and extras that come with it. Again, I don't remember exactly how things were, so I'm using my previous video as a reference. A minor complaint I have is that they taped the manual to the top of the cardboard protective padding. The tape was a little difficult to get off the manual without damaging it. The box of goodies is fairly big and makes up a bit of the packing protection as well, which slightly worries me for future packing if needed. The box contains some vital parts to the printer as well as some extras. To start it off, you get a kilogram of Bambu Lab brand green PLA. The box has the power cord with a 3-prong protector on it. It has the spool holder, replacement PTFE tube, extra long Allen key drivers, a printer nozzle cleaner, and some other miscellaneous items for printed extras. The big box contained a smaller box. I believe the first thing out of the small box was the LCD screen. There were also other little pieces to the printer, but I'll skip those. They give you small disposable packets of lubrication and a packet of thermal grease. Honestly, I don't even know what thermal grease is or what it's used for. It might be something to do with if you needed to change your thermistor, but I don't remember exactly. I haven't had to do anything like that yet. They give you an extra hot end / nozzle. I believe those parts are kind of combined on this printer. They give you a bottle of their print adhesive. I haven't tried it yet because I haven't had to use it, so I can't tell you what kind of substance or consistency it is. What I can tell you is it looks like it's in a bottle that they may have engineered themselves. Either way, I think it's a fancy bottle that only opens when you press down on the top or something like that. So the logic is that it won't spill if it tips, but it only opens when applying and using. I don't remember anything more, and nothing more is shown on the original video. The only other things were a few packets of other stuff like 3M magnets and other crafty things to add to the printer for some printed accessories included on the SD card. One thing that took me a while to notice was that there was no included scraper. Now, to me, this comes down to two things. It's possible that they're just that confident that their printer isn't going to have prints too stuck down to the bed, at least not with basic materials. And when they do, they want you to make your own scraper. I didn't know when the best time to bring this up was, so I'm just going to do it now. They have two options for scrapers. The first one is a fully 3D printed model by Bambu P. At least hopefully I said the name right. I wouldn't trust this model too much though, especially if the printed model is being particularly difficult, though it may work in a pinch. The other model is called Scraper Grip by Bambu Lab. This model confused me because it printed with a few pieces, and I thought it was an extension or something for the other 3D printed scraper. I only found out how it's actually supposed to be used much later because they show the scraper in one of their unrelated tutorial videos or something like that. I don't remember exactly where I saw it, but what they want you to do is put a razor blade on the end of the stick and use that as a scraper. Now, I have a few thoughts on this. First of all, that is a dangerous freaking scraper. They do have another model to put a lid on the scraper and include accessories to attach the lid to the printer. But even so, you can cause more damage than good with the razor scraper while trying to remove prints. But at the same time, it may be more effective at removing prints than a normal paint/printer scraper, if used properly, of course. If this would be your first printer, I would still recommend that you buy and start with a paint scraper style of scraper. Depending on which one you get, they can be just as dangerous, but typically they are safer for you, your print, and the build surface. Well, it's the time you've all been waiting for. Let's look at the actual printer. The printer's overall form is a rigid box. I believe this helps with the sturdiness and some of its other technology that helps with the print speed and quality. It has a quite large print area compared to most printers available, big enough for 99% of your prints, depending on how ambitious you are. People have complained about the LCD screen because the user interface is kinda hassling to use. Because of the layout and style, some things have been abbreviated or shortened, so they can be misconstrued on what they do, and sometimes even finding the options can be hard if you don't know the format of some of the menus. My couple of gripes is that when installing, I was a little fearful of breaking things on it. I was worried about the ribbon cable possibly getting crushed on installation, and if I remember correctly, it didn't make a pleasant sound when snapping into place. There we go. It wasn't exactly a beautiful sound, but it's on there. My other issue is that I can hear the ringing of the lights or something in it. This is probably a young person or gifted problem, because it's like a much more minor version of the old CRT TVs. They also have this ringing that can be pretty bothersome sometimes. Unfortunately for me, this screen also rings a little. It's only a minor problem that will probably go away with age, my age, but still, you know, it's just... Okay, so I was just trying to capture the sound of the ringing of the LCD screen. Unfortunately, it seemed, well, somewhat fortunately, unfortunately for me trying to get this clip, it doesn't happen all the time, so I don't know exactly what causes it, because right now it's not ringing, which could be a factor of a few things. I did recently turn off the machine, so maybe it takes a while of being powered for it to some reason just start ringing. I also was out in the world a little bit. I just went down the street with my dad and went to the grocery store, so it's possible that something's going on in my head or whatever, that my tinnitus is either overpowering it, or I don't have tinnitus right now, actually. I don't hear the ringing, but it's possible that I'm just having some sort of, like, it's hard to describe, but you know, the best way I can describe it is mental clogging of not being able to hear it. I don't think it's just a mental thing that I think I'm hearing it. I'm kind of hearing it now, actually. But yeah, I think that it's possible that towards the beginning of powering it up, it doesn't, but then after a little bit, it will again. I can definitely hear it now. Or is that something else? There's so many things that ring in this room right now. It's so annoying. The thing that seems to be kind of popular amongst more complicated machines is that creators like to put things on the back of the machines. On the Creator Pro 2, there were quite a few things on the back, crammed together, and it was pretty annoying. On this printer, we don't have a lot going on the back. However, you have probably heard this before, it frickin' shoots plastic out of the back of it. People call this the poop chute, but honestly, that coin term's novelty has kind of worn off on me, and I'm ready to go back to professionalism on this one. So a few issues I have with the purge chute. Number one is the pure inconvenience of it. I'm kind of out of the loop most of the time, but I haven't heard anyone else really complain about this. Am I the only one that's bothered by major things happening on the back of machines? Because of this chute, I have to orient the printer strangely to be able to access the chute and control the printer with the front screen. So theoretically, depending on the machine, I could have put another printer on this table. But the P1P has to be the way it is now because you need something to catch the plastic out of the chute and access the screen, as well as you should only put your hands in the front typically. I almost had a possibly gruesome accident because I reached in from the top, which was also partially caused by the chute itself. This is kind of two issues in one about the chute and the other about the overall form. I don't remember exactly what function was happening. I believe it was just the filament loading process. The printer had heated up and moved over the extrusion chute, so when you load the filament, it wouldn't get all over the build surface. So I loaded the filament and the machine did its thing. I don't remember why, but the print head moved out to the middle of the build area, and there was a string that had fallen out of the purge area somehow. This is a semi-frequent occurrence, by the way. So I was doing the loading and unloading process, trying to test some stuff out, and there was plastic that was stuck right here, but right now I have no clue where it actually went. I don't know where it is now, but there's also plastic that's stuck on the nozzle there. I don't know if that was oozed out before the cooling is finished, but this has been seeming to be a very common occurrence, and it's been really annoying, and it's been getting in the way of things. I don't know how to fix it. I haven't looked it up yet. I don't know if this is a common occurrence for other people after a certain amount of time. Like I said, I haven't looked it up, but yeah, I figured I should let you know about that. But what I did that was stupid and dangerous was I reached in from the top of the print frame. I did this because it was the most convenient angle, with the printer having to be sideways and not having the enclosure and all that. I also did it thinking that the printer was idle, but I was wrong. Of course, right when I reach in, the printer had sprung into action and quickly put itself back in the default position. If the default position was any further back on the Y-axis, there could and probably would have been damage to the printer, or more likely, me. Okay, well, what I was trying to demonstrate here was I was trying to find that position where this bar was in that position where my arm got stuck and almost got mangled, but in the current position it is now, I would have been injured, and I can't find that other position, so I have really no idea what that other position is, but I'm just really lucky that I didn't get stuck in one of these areas, because I can't even get my arm in there. So yeah, I really don't know, but I just got extremely lucky that one time. So those are a few things to be aware of. To summarize, try not to reach into the printer anywhere but the front, and don't go in until you know there's no functions happening, because this thing zips even when it doesn't have to. And be aware that for some reason, purges don't always make it out or even into the chute. You're probably sick of hearing about the purge chute, but unfortunately there is more. The chute is a slide with a pretty big opening. Even though I have my moments, I'm not typically a real crafty person, so I don't see a whole lot to work with on the back of the printer to make a bag or something to catch the waste like on a power sander with the dust bag. I haven't looked up any solutions yet, though I should. There's probably a lot of people coming up with solutions for this issue, but my fix is to simply use a filament box. Using the lid propped up against my Ender 3 V2 as a backboard, this works most of the time. But on occasion, it will shotgun plastic out in a strange direction and just fly off somewhere. Typically, it's behind my tables, making it really difficult to pick up. So that's another thing to look out for with the chute. Everything else from my experience is solid and stable. Some additions that I thought were on the accessorized, upgraded version, but not this one, were the camera and light. There's a camera to create time lapses of your prints. One thing to keep in mind if you actually plan to use these clips is that some media platforms may not accept this file type. My editing software won't accept the file type, so I have to run it through a different editing software called Shotcut, because it's just a lot easier to run it through that and convert it to an MP4 through there, because usually it can accept a lot of weird file types and then convert it into a usable one. And a light for your work area to illuminate the prints for you and the videos. The camera is also typically a good way to troubleshoot failing prints. I suspect this camera is the reason they give you such a big SD card, which I think is about 32 gigabytes. Which reminds me, a complaint from some of the early adopters was that the SD card was hard to remove, if I remember correctly. I think the original area around the SD card slot was flat. Now it has a little indent, so most fingers or fingernails should be able to press it out properly. My only issue is remembering which way to put the SD card in the slot. So moving on from the body, let's talk about the user interface. Like stated before, people have complained about this UI ever since the printer came out. This is because this is a very old and sort of crude way of having the user interface, especially for a printer of this price bracket and how advanced the rest of the printer is. There's an app for the printer, though I only used it to connect the printer to my internet. I think you can start prints from files on your phone and possibly files on the SD card, but I can't confirm that. The good thing about having the printer connected to your internet is that it automatically asks you if you want to install new firmware if it detects that there's new versions available. And to install it, all you have to do is press the confirm button when it asks you and wait for the printer to do its thing. Now the interface is a bit block style due to the style of the screen selected. For the most part, it's easy to understand, but sometimes I lose what is selected and I can't figure out how to get back to the main selectable areas. You have 4 major tabs currently available. First is the Status and Monitoring tab. This shows you the overall information about the current status of your printer and the progress it's made for your current print. The only controls available on this screen are the pause and resume functions. I've never used them, so I don't know how well they work. One quick thing to note is that square button is not a pause button. Obviously, that is a stop button. At least that used to be the universal sign for that. I don't know if you can actually pause prints if you press the play button, if it'll switch to a pause function, or if if it's a pause/resume button all in one. But as far as I know, you can't pause the prints. That's only from my knowledge. I don't typically pause prints in general. Next is the manual control menu. This is where you can move the print head, adjust speeds, set temperatures, and turn on and off the print light. This is also where you can activate the feeding functions. That is the name of a tab that you can click on, and it brings up options for loading and unloading filaments. That menu is one of the main things that can get confusing if you don't remember how it works. Now we have the options menu where you can handle some more technical things, set up some preferences, and recalibrate the printer if needed. Lastly, we have the print menu. I believe this only can show files from the SD card, but I may be wrong. A complaint from early adopters was that the files seemed to be kind of random in their order, and sometimes they would even print the wrong file. As far as my experience, both of these complaints have been fixed. The prints are listed from newest added, and I have never had a wrong model print unless it was a user error. Now, some things I would have liked to see would be that the interface can recognize folders and go in and out of them. I'm partially a data hoarder, and I like to keep print files I like. Many G-code files don't take up a lot of space, so you can fit a lot of G-code files on most SD cards. The problem with this is when you want to find an older file. Another great addition would be if you could change the way the files are organized, because I would rather have the organization be number than alphabetical order instead of date added. But that's also where the folders come in. Even if you have alphabetical organization, if you have a lot of print files, it could take a while to sort through and find what you want. So at least being able to go one folder deep can condense this problem down a bit. With that being said, the system does recognize that folders exist, but won't show them. It will show all G-code files in folders and put them in date-added order no matter what folder they are in, at least as far as I've seen and observed. Some things to note is that it will not show G-code files that are 2 folders deep or deeper. So if a folder is inside of another folder or deeper, it won't show up. And if you're using periods, points, or decimals in your file names, files that start with a point in their name will not be shown. It has to start with a number or letter. I don't know about any other symbols, but let me know if you try some of them out. The SD card comes with quite a few preloaded prints, a plethora compared to most other printer manufacturers. There's actually more effort put into the files on it too. Some files have 2 versions, where one is a single color and the other is designed to work with the AMS system. Even though I'd really like to have an AMS, unfortunately it has been out of my price range ever since I bought the P1P. But what's cool about these files is that they were properly curated, and most of them seem to have more purpose than look at this neat thing I just printed. Some examples are the 3D Benchy, one of the most classic tests of just about every function of a printer. There are some puzzles that are in pieces printed separately, which I assume, other than being fun little trinkets, are used to show the printing size tolerances. There's also this vase model, though it wouldn't really work as a vase as it's almost completely made of holes. This is one of the longest prints, saying in Bambu Studio, Bambu Labs Slicer, that it would take a little more than 9 hours to print. Other than that, I don't know what this would demonstrate, other than being able to print big and for a long time. It could possibly be a good test for the pause and resume functions, but yeah, when it's done printing, there's no real use for this. I guess you could put fake flowers in it or some other alternative decorative filler. One thing that I noticed was the model called Spartan SD card holder by Juan Salamanca, I think that's his name. That name alone piqued my interest. Looking at the model in Bambu Studio, it looks like a mess at first, but that is because we're looking at the G-code rather than the STL. It has all the tree supports generated already, and it's all in the same color. However, I do have a concern about this model, the way it would print as is. If you're looking at the Spartan head-on, on the left side of him, it seems that there would be some problem areas concerning the supports. Specifically the underside of the left side of his helmet. To me, there's already some ugly stringing that looks like the supports just barely tried to touch that area. But as it stands now, I don't think that file would print 100% properly. And since it's G-code, it's pretty much final. You can't reslice it, it has to be how it is. There are some programs that are working on trying to reverse engineer G-code, but they still don't work all of the time, and they don't work with every type of generated G-code. Since they give the actual file names and creators, you could logically track down a source file somewhere and make it proper though. I know it's taking forever to get to the actual printing, but hear me out. This confused me at first. I was used to older printers where they either start heating one element at a time or both at the same time to full temperatures. But the P1P has a slightly more advanced preheat function where it will start to heat the bed, but it will also start to preheat the nozzle as well. I assume this is to make the heating process a little faster in its kind of long pre-print process. I was confused on my first few prints because I thought the printer was going to try and print at 75 degrees on the nozzle, which would most likely break something. Another thing to be mentioned is that there is a calibration process that's much smaller than the first calibration process. It's much faster, but it does take 5 minutes every time, and I believe that it's required for it to happen. So that's kind of a nuisance. There might be something in the G-code, in the start G-code, that you can remove it, but in general it's probably a good idea to keep it around. So with all that being said, let's actually print something. Like I said before, the Benchy is one of the most classic, charming, and useful prints to gauge the current performance of a printer and your filament. The Benchy was preloaded, so I have no way of knowing what settings were used. What I can say off the bat is that it printed without a skirt, and when I came for the finished print, it was completely disadhered from the build plate. I'm guessing this was caused by the cooling of the plate, because the print is completed and has no exaggerated faults. So this was most likely intentional disadhesion, or at least as intentional as material expansion and contraction can be. I have no way of knowing how long it actually took to print because the printer doesn't show a print duration after the print is finished, at least for now. People have mentioned this a few times before, so they may implement the feature in the future firmware updates, though at the moment it looks unlikely because this is a small complaint made many times for a while now, so again, not looking likely. To give you a reference though, when I import the G-code into Bambu Studio, it says a little less than 6-minute prep time, about 20.5 minutes of print time, leaving 26 minutes and 14 seconds of print time total. Honestly, I'm inclined to believe it. Let's check the quality though. Okay, so we're standing in front of the printer after it just completed the quick print that was preloaded. This is different. I have re-leveled and recalibrated the printer because I've had it for a while. Now, an issue that I want to talk about that has just kind of recently happened was that I've never had to recalibrate the printer, but I did it because I figured it would be a good idea. Unfortunately, while it was recalibrating this time, it kind of like spews a little bit of plastic, and then for some reason the plastic kept getting stuck to the very end of the nozzle, and then it gets stuck and stays there during the leveling process and calibration process. I don't know if that messed up the data at all, but that's just something to be aware of going forward, looking at however this turned out. So here it is, literally like barely attached to the plate. It actually wasn't even attached to the plate. Right now, I'm sure it was, like I said in the script, it was due to disadhesion. But here is what we have. I need to turn down the microphone probably a little bit. So here we have the Benchy. It might be hard for the camera to see it all properly. If I look at it, so to me it looks like there might be a slight bit of weird stuff happening on the very back of the main like cockpit area. I don't know if this camera can see it. They're just kind of like minor, very minor shifts, but this one was printed, I believe, in 21 minutes. That's what it says on the printer, at least, for the pre-print file, but like I said, it doesn't say anything after. There's no stringing or anything. Oh, actually, there's just a minor little one there, but nothing that can't be just, plucked out, and then it'll be done. The bottom has a few itty-bitty gaps where they're not supposed to. It doesn't look like it's going to be able to see the detail. Where are they? They're pretty much right up here below the Y and the Z, and then I think right on the other side of the Z as well. Yeah, on the top part of this Z. I don't know how well the camera can see it. So otherwise, Everything looks pretty good. You can't make out the words that are supposed to be back there. I'm not quite experienced enough to know if that is just simply due to the nozzle and layer height, or if it is due to the printer, but like I said, it's a speed print, so it's not even meant to look this good anyway. But that was preloaded, so they could have rigged the settings to be the best case scenario. Let's see what happens when I put the Benchy through their slicer normally. This Benchy was sliced with all default settings: 0.20mm standard profile, generic PLA material profile, and textured PEI plate settings. I hope these are all proper for comparison. The only thing that I changed was a small modification to the start G-code, which turned off the excessive purge. So now that you know the settings, let's look at the quality before getting into some interesting data. Okay, so now we're going to look at the quality of the sliced print. This was on the default profile for 0.2 layer, so if anything's messed up, it's kind of Bambu's fault. I don't think I've changed anything, but I might be wrong, because you can overwrite the defaults, I think, but usually I make a separate thing. I don't know. We'll just look at it. So once again, barely was attached to the build plate. In fact, it wasn't on the end, but that's fine. It's not that big of a deal, especially for the textured build plate. That might be why it's so easy to get off, is because I think it expands when you heat it up, and then when it contracts, all the little divots might free it. So looking at this, there's a few more little strings. I don't know if this camera will be detailed enough to capture it, but there's some more up top here. Little wispies on the very top, but I think that's normal. There's a little itty bitty, very minuscule spike that is happening off of the steam pipe, I think it is, just because of where it left off. And then there's some wispies just around the board, the deck. Anyway, I don't know boat terms, unfortunately, which I guess I have to learn to be able to to explain this properly, huh? But yeah, there's just, other than wispies, everything looks pretty good. There's the whole line, but then there's like a separate line. I don't know if I'm going to be able to show that on this camera or on any camera. But other than this, there's this major crease, but then there's a minor crease that's going kind of slanted up the hull like that. I don't think that that's quite normal, but it's also not a huge deal, assumingly. Looking at it, you can only barely tell, and it's if it's in the right light. I don't know if that would have any problems structurally, like mechanically, but you know, for the most part, looks pretty good. It's almost perfect, just those few things that I mentioned before. So I know that I said I wasn't going to go too in-depth into specs or anything, but this is a neat comparison compared to other printers in terms of print time. Let's talk about the theoretical times of the same print on different slicers for different machines. First of all, preloaded versus slice time. Preloaded was 26 minutes and 14 seconds. Standard sliced was 45 minutes and 44 seconds. Quite the jump up in time, but still, even with that jump, let's see how it compares to other printers on their respective slicers. We have started with the P1P on Bambu Slicer. Now we have the Ender 3 V3 SE on Creality Print and the Ender 3 V2 on Cura Slicer. P1P, we have established that the time is 45 minutes and 44 seconds. The V3 SE on its base speedy settings, trying to keep up with other modern printers in higher price brackets, is 1 hour, 1 minute, and 30 seconds. That is a 15-minute and 46-second difference. Now the V2 on Cura Slicer with default speeds and settings is 1 hour and 50 minutes. That's a 48-minute and 30-second difference between the Ender printers, and an hour and 4-minute and 16-second difference between the V2 and the P1P. Now some of that difference can come down to slicer, but majority of that difference does come down to the capable speeds of the machines. Kind of as a side note, I have a script here, but I'm going off of it. I forgot while writing this that there is a Ender 3 V2 profile in Bambu Slicer. I haven't tried it, but I'll try and put up a screenshot now of what the estimated time of that profile would be on Bambu Slicer. Like stated before, another change that I made to my slicer settings is the pre-extrusion amount to none. This is the extrusion that would happen before every print that gets shot out the back. They unfortunately don't make this a basic setting to change except for when it comes to color changing purges for the AMS system. But obviously that's not what we're talking about here. So typically, every time you start a print, the extruder dumps a fair bit of plastic in the garbage because it wants to make sure that there's plastic fully in the extruder and gets rid of old plastic or something like that. There were some kind of BS explanations I've heard a while ago, but to be fair, I think those were made by average people on forums, not Bambu Labs representatives. Either way, while I was working on my guitar picks, single guitar picks, it would do its purge thing every time. The purge when using PLA is only a few cents wasted, but when you're doing a bunch of tiny prints like these, it really adds up. Plus, I just kinda hate waste. I'm no hippie, but this planet is going down because of the non-renewable resources thrown away like metals and consumable plastics. I've always been kinda conservative on resources though. This might be kind of an unrelatable analogy for some people, but when I was a kid playing Minecraft, I would hoard iron and only make stone pickaxes unless I needed the resources that can only be mined by iron. I definitely don't have time for that crap now though. Anyway, this purge annoyed me and can be kinda costly when using more expensive filaments like Polymaker PLA Plus that costs $25 to $30 only for 750 grams instead of the typical 1,000. So the start of this next topic may seem a little off topic, but stick with me. Some people asked me why I bought the Ender 3 V3 SE even though I already had a P1P, and that comes down to a simple problem that I couldn't find a solution to, and that was/is Bambu Slicer. This subject is currently changing, but you are meant to be locked down to their slicer and firmware. There have been some developments in this area like said before, but they wanted to originally lock things down to keep things simple on their end. Now technically you can use other slices with the printer even by default, but you have to set up the printer profile properly, which I don't have a lot of experience with, which is why Orca Slicer exists. Because from my understanding, it's a community-developed, modified, and expanded version of Bambu Slicer. So they took the abilities and profiles that were already there and added some features that they wanted and changed things to make it more usable or suitable for other users and made it open source rather than the gated walls that Bambu was trying to set up. I haven't worked with Orca Slicer much, but I also haven't said the issue with Bambu Slicer yet. Now, if I remember correctly, Bambu Slicer is an altered/evolved version of Prusa Slicer, which Prusa Slicer, and by extension Bambu Slicer, work differently from my preferred slicer, Cura. Supposedly, Prusa and Bambu Slicer are extremely accurate, but when I tried to use this slicer for the P1P to produce my guitar picks that are commonly seen in my Ender 3 V3 SE videos, it came out with some strange anomalies. And I'm not talking strictly printing anomalies either. In the slicer, because I have a receded logo on the first layer, the second layer arbitrarily separates the plastic flow over top of that area. I like to think of this as the grain. If you have had a tool like a shovel or hammer with a wooden handle, chances are the handle's grain was parallel with the tool head in its primary use case. This is because these grains have similar properties to layer lines in 3D printing. The grains are weaker in one direction and stronger in the other. If you are observing the strength of tools or 3D prints alike, you want your grains, 1, going in the proper orientation, but also more importantly, 2, you want your grains to be completed, solid, all one piece. This separation does not cause the print to fail, however in my testing they do start to deform faster. They don't break, which can be a combination of the design and the plastic I use, but they do start to warp and lose integrity, which changes the playing field substantially. Now the reason this doesn't make sense is because I designed this pick in FreeCAD specifically for the precision measurements. I modeled the recession to be 0.2 deep and the number protrusion to be 0.2 high. This is so that they each only affect a single layer when printed at 0.2 layer height. And just to confirm it, yes, the layer height is set to 0.2. In addition to that major anomaly, there's also a strange line thing that happens under the number extrusion. To my knowledge, there's no reason for this to happen. These anomalies also happen no matter the thickness of the pick, though the thinnest pick gets particularly messed up because the anomalies get combined. So after a day or two of trying to look up solutions, I went to Bambu customer support and inquired. I had screenshots that I included and compared them to Cura Slicer, which handles the model perfectly. Their explanation was simply that their slicer is too accurate. That's pretty much it. They said that Cura is more simple, and if it doesn't understand something, it will basically discard it. So they also said that since their slicer is so accurate, it will perfectly reproduce models, imperfections and all. I didn't know what else to say to them at the time other than to make a simpler mode or version of the slicer, but this explanation has never sat right with me. I designed this model specifically for 3D printing, like I said before, at 0.2 layer height. And from what I can tell, everything checks out in my model and should function properly. The model comes out perfectly when sliced correctly using a dumb slicer, like Cura. So that could only mean that I'm missing something in Bambu Slicer, or Bambu Slicer is actually stupid contrary to what support has to say, and it's kind of tweaking out and doing whatever it wants in this case. There are a lot of settings in Bambu Slicer even outside of the advanced mode, so I could very well be missing something here. But I really don't think it's a user error in this case, especially that my custom print profiles have only changed some basic values. Therefore, if anything advanced is messed up, it's a 99% probability it was Bambu Labs' fault for defaulting to whatever it is. So, that's pretty much all I have to say about the printer. I could have shown more prints, but there are a million other videos for that. Okay, so I have a kind of a bonus model here. I wasn't planning on printing anything more for the video, but I just happened to print this model because I needed some other clips of other things, not even necessarily the printing process, though you did see this model in the time-lapse section, which just happened to work out. So, we're gonna check this out and just see how it looks because I printed it in the span of this video. Ooh. Okay, so I printed this one on my other bed here. Let's take it off. And as you can see, it's not falling off like it usually does. But I think I also forgot to change the printer profile to use the right type of bed. So this is actually probably bad, because I think I've been doing this for a little while and they have been a little extra stuck down. I'm not sure if that's because it puts it a little closer for textured beds to get it in those grooves, but you definitely don't want it in the grooves of something like this. This is I think it's called PE, I can't remember, but it's the one that looks like carbon fiber on the bottom and then puts a carbon fiber pattern, and I really like this bed. Hopefully I'll include a affiliates link down below if you'd like to use it as an alternative, because like I said, I like smoother beds typically, especially if I'm trying to do my pick project, which of course didn't work with this bed, or with this printer. Anyway, so as you can see, this is not, it didn't take very much force to come off at least. Some of my other prints, I guess maybe if they have a larger bottom surface area, they will be a lot more difficult to actually get off. Another thing to be careful is when you're taking off this little pre-extrusion, it's usually better to go at this side, because I've tried a few times to go in here on this corner, and then it jams in your nail and then pokes you in your cuticle and stuff, and it just sucks. And that magnet is so strong, it feels like it's gonna crush my finger when I try and put that bed on every time. Anyway, here is the model that I printed. It is a spiral chess horse. I'm not making a chess set, I just liked this model, and I needed something to print, like I said, for other clips. The only faults in it that I see are a little bit of wispiness and a little itty-bitty spike at the very top from where it finished. I don't know if there's a way to fix that in slicer settings, but otherwise it's pretty much perfect. It did not need any supports So at least there's that. I hate supports, and I don't know how to use supports without getting an absolutely atrocious, like, bottom side from where the supports were supporting. So yeah, I just wanted to add this little bit in. It's nothing special, but once again, another pretty perfect print for now. I just wanted to get most of the basics out of the way and share my seemingly unique experience. The unfortunate thing is that for just about any other model, the slicer and printer work perfectly. If you do normal things with the printer, you're basically set. But if you get a little too outside the box, you could end up with some disappointments. There is some danger if you're not smart about how you use and interact with the printer, but for the most part, it's a workhorse for a semi-decent price for the accuracy and speed you get. Am I happy that I spent $600? No. Am I happy that I'll have to spend $350 more to get the multicolor capability? Not too much. Am I happy with what I got in the end? About 98%. Thank you for watching this video, especially if you made it through the whole thing. This channel is mainly a music channel, so normally we're doing things that involve guitar or drums. But I do try to do something different and put a little variety, which has been a lot of 3D printing lately. That's because that's been one of my more important projects in my life lately. So if that sounds good to you, then consider clicking the subscribe button. Like I also mentioned towards the beginning of the video, I am also working with the Amazon Affiliates program. Currently I make no income, so buying something through one of those links is a great way to help me along. I tried to include some useful things since Bambu Labs isn't currently on Amazon. If you have a recommendation for a video idea or concept, please let me know in the comments below. That's all I have to say for now, so I'm gonna say bye-bye.